The morning Adaeze hired the young man, the sky over Toronto was the color of ash. She hadn't meant to hire anyone that day. She had gone into the dry cleaning shop at 6:15 in the morning the way she always did. Lights on, steam machine first, the old radio on the shelf tuned to a gospel station she never changed. And she had found an envelope slipped under the door. Inside was a water bill, 2 months overdue. She set it under the register, face down, the way you set a thing you're not ready to look at. The knock came at 8:47. She remembered the time because she had just burned her thumb on the pressing iron, and she was running it under cold water when she heard it. 3 knocks, polite, not desperate. She dried her hand and went to the door. He was young. Maybe 26, maybe 28. Tall, with the kind of posture that comes from someone who was told to stand up straight and actually listened. He wore a plain gray hoodie and jeans that were clean but old, and he was holding a piece of paper that he had folded in half, then in half again. "I saw the sign," he said. Adaeze looked past him at the door. The help wanted sign had been there for 3 weeks, mostly because she had not gotten around to taking it down after the last person quit. She looked back at him. "The sign is old," she said, "but you still need someone." It was not a question. She studied him for a moment. He did not look away. "You know how to steam a suit?" she asked. "No," he said, "but I can learn." His name, he told her, was Marcus. He had just moved to Toronto. He said it the way people say things they've rehearsed. Not lying exactly, but careful. She did not press him. She had come to this out 15 years ago from Enugu, and she remembered what it felt like to answer questions about yourself before you were ready to answer them. She hired him on the spot, at minimum wage, starting the next morning. That night, alone in her apartment above the shop, Adaeze sat at the kitchen table with the water bill and a piece of paper where she had written down her numbers. The column on the left was what she owed. The column on the right was what she had. The column on the right was shorter. She had opened Adaeze's dry cleaners 11 years ago with money she had saved for 7 years and a loan from her church community. She had built it quietly, steadily, the way you build anything when you do not have help. 1 customer, then 2. Then a word-of-mouth reputation in the Ghanaian and Nigerian community around Eglinton West that meant something. She had survived 2 rent increases, a flood from the apartment upstairs, and a stretch during the winter 3 years ago, when she had gone 4 months without paying herself a salary. But the neighborhood was changing. A new chain cleaner had opened 6 blocks away. Young people in the condos that had gone up on the old parking lot did not know her name yet. And her older customers, the ones who had been coming since the beginning, some of them had moved, some had passed away, and some had just quietly stopped coming, the way people do. She folded the water bill and put it in the drawer. She would figure it out. She always did. Marcus arrived the next morning at 6:10. 5 minutes before she did. He was standing outside the door when she got there, hands in his pockets, breath making small clouds in the October air. She unlocked the door without comment, and he followed her inside and watched while she turned on the lights and started the steam machine. She showed him everything once. How to check the tags, how to sort by fabric, how to treat a stain before it went on the conveyor, how to hang finished pieces facing the same direction, how to talk to a customer who was angry about something that was not your fault. He was slow at first, not careless, slow. He read every tag twice. He asked questions that told her he was actually thinking, not just nodding. What if the tag says dry clean only, but the customer says they wash it at home? He asked on the second day. You do what the tag says, she told him, and you document it, always. He nodded and wrote it in a small notebook he kept in his back pocket. By the end of the first week, he could sort a full rack in under 12 minutes. By the end of the second, He had started noticing things without being told. A button loose on a blazer, a hem that had come undone, a pocket lining with a small tear. He would set these pieces aside with a note, the way she did. She did not compliment him. She was not the kind of person who gave compliments for doing a job correctly. But she noticed. What she also noticed was this. He was always careful with the older pieces. A woman's wool coat from the 1970s brought in by her granddaughter. A man's church suit, the fabric worn thin at the elbows. Marcus handled these as if he understood they were not just clothing. He was slow with them in a different way, not hesitant, but respectful. She asked him about it once, on a Tuesday, while they were both folding sheets. "The old things," she said. "You're careful." He thought about it before answering. "My grandmother had a coat she kept for 30 years. She brought it in to be cleaned every autumn. She said it still had good years in it." "Did it? I don't know. She passed before she could wear it again." He paused. "I think about that sometimes, things that had good years left." Adaeze went back to folding. She did not say anything, but she thought about it for the rest of the afternoon. The weeks passed the way weeks do when you are working, quickly and slowly at the same time. Marcus learned. He learned how to talk to the Saturday rush customers, the ones who needed a suit by Sunday morning, and were already stressed before they walked through the door. He learned that Mrs. Okonkwo, who came every other Thursday, liked to be called Mama Christie, and that if you asked her about her grandchildren, she would talk for 20 minutes and tip you $5. He learned that the young man from the condo on the corner always forgot his ticket, and that you should just pull his order by the blue North Face jacket hanging with it. He also made mistakes. He mixed up 2 orders on day 11 and had to spend his lunch break reorganizing the rack while Adaeze handled the customers and did not look at him. He overloaded the steam machine on day 17 and tripped the breaker, and the shop was without power for 40 minutes while she called the electrician, and he stood outside with a handwritten sign apologizing for the delay. She did not fire him. She corrected him. Once, clearly, and then it was done. "You don't repeat a correction," she told him after the breaker incident, when they were locking up. "That means I don't trust you to learn, and I trust you to learn." He looked at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Not gratitude exactly. Something older than gratitude. "My mother used to say something like that," he said quietly. "Was she a woman of good sense? The best I've ever known." He paused. "She passed when I was 19. Adaeze locked the door. "Go home, Marcus. Get some rest." She said nothing else. But on the walk upstairs, she thought about her own mother, who was still alive and living in Enugu, and who called every Sunday at noon. She thought about what it would mean to have had her taken at 19. She thought about who Marcus might have become without that. She thought maybe she was beginning to understand the particular quiet that lived behind his eyes. It was Mama Christie who said it first, though Adaeze had been thinking it for at least a week. "That boy," Mama Christie said on a Thursday, taking her garment bag from Marcus and watching him turn back to the counter. "He has the hands of someone who grew up without having to work." Adaeze looked up from the register. "I mean no disrespect," Mama Christie added quickly. "He is a good worker, but there is something. You can always tell." Adaeze did not respond. She thanked Mama Christie and watched her go. That evening, she watched Marcus more carefully than she had before. She watched the way he typed on his phone during the lunch break. Quickly, both thumbs, the kind of ease that comes from a device you've had for years, and not one you saved up for. She watched the way he tilted his head when a customer spoke, listening completely, the way people listen when they have been trained to listen. She watched how he spoke. His English was clean and unaccented, the kind of English that comes from private schooling, or a family that paid attention to those things. She did not say anything. It was not her business, but she noticed. On day 22, there was a difficult afternoon. A customer came in. A man in his 40s, suit and tie, the kind of impatience that comes from a person who is used to things moving faster than they do. He had left a coat 3 weeks ago and come back for it without his ticket. Adaeze told him they needed the ticket or the last name on the order. He gave her the name. She searched the system. It was not there. He raised his voice. He said she had lost it. He said he was going to report her. He said a number of things that Adaeze had heard before and knew how to absorb. She kept her voice even and her face still and began to methodically search the rack herself. She heard Marcus behind her, moving. She half turned, ready to tell him she had it handled. But he had not come forward. He had gone to the back, and he returned a moment later with a coat in a plastic bag. He checked the tag, then checked the system on the secondary screen. It was entered under a different spelling, he said to Adaeze, not to the customer. The first name, I can show you. She looked at the system. He was right. A simple transcription error from 3 weeks ago, before Marcus had started. She turned back to the customer and presented the coat without comment. The man took it without apology and left. Marcus went back to his station. After a moment, Adaeze said, "You handled that well. You were handling it," he said. "I just found the coat." She went back to work, but she kept thinking about it, the way he had stepped in without stepping over her, the way he had directed the information to her and let her remain the authority in the room. It was a small thing. It was not a small thing. On day 29, the pipe under the back sink burst. It happened at 2 in the afternoon, a thin stream at first, and then a fast, cold pour across the floor of the back room. Marcus found it and shut off the water valve before Adaeze had processed what was happening. He grabbed the mop and the spare towels from the shelf and had the worst of it contained in 10 minutes. The plumber cost $420. Adaeze wrote the check and did not let her face change. That night she sat at the kitchen table again. She did not get out the paper with the columns. She already knew what the columns said. She thought about the shop. She thought about 11 years. She thought about her mother calling on Sunday and asking how things were going, and Adaeze saying, "Fine, Mama, always fine." She thought about the coat in Mama Christie's arms and the woman from the condo who had brought in a wedding dress, nervous and trusting. She thought about all the things people brought to her that mattered to them. She pressed her hands flat on the table. She was not done yet. On day 30, a black car pulled up in front of Adaeze's dry cleaners. Not a taxi. Not a rideshare with a little pink logo in the window. A car. Long, dark, the kind with tinted glass that tells you something without saying a word. It parked on the yellow curb with the ease of a vehicle that does not worry about tickets. Adaeze was with a customer at the front counter. When she saw it through the window, she finished the transaction without looking up again, but her mind was already turning. The door opened. The man who walked in was perhaps 60 years old. He was wearing a suit that Adaeze recognized immediately. Not the brand, but the cut. The kind of cut that costs more than a month of her shop's revenue. His hair was mostly gray, close-cropped, and he walked with the unhurried pace of a person who has been the most important one in every room for a long time. Behind him, a younger man in a dark jacket held the door and then stood just inside it. The older man looked around the shop once, slowly, the way you look at something you've heard about and are now measuring against what you imagined. Then he looked at Marcus. Marcus had gone very still. The older man said, in a voice that was quiet and carried anyway, "Emeka." The shop went silent. Adaeze looked at Marcus. He was not looking at her. He was looking at the older man with an expression that was complicated in the way that only the expressions we wear for our fathers are complicated. Love and frustration and something that has no clean name. "Dad," Marcus said. And then, after a pause, "How did you find me?" The older man almost smiled. "You think I don't know every city you go to." He introduced himself to Adaeze as Mr. Osei. Dr. Roland Osei, though he said the title last, like an afterthought. He shook her hand properly, both hands, the way elders do. He said he had heard about her shop. "From who?" she asked. "From my son," he said. "He calls me every Sunday." She looked at Marcus, at Emeka, and he looked at the floor. Dr. Osei sat down in the single chair near the window, the one Adaeze kept for customers who were waiting. He did not ask permission. He sat down the way a man sits when he has something to say and has decided he will say it. "He doesn't know I'm here," he said to Adaeze. "Well, he knows now." He glanced at his son. "I will tell you what he will not. His name is Emeka Roland Osei. He is my eldest. He studied commerce and international business at McGill, graduated at the top of his class, and he has been offered a position as vice president of operations at my company." He paused. He declined. Adaeze said nothing. "He told me he needed to understand how work actually felt before he could lead people who did it." The older man looked at his son again, and something in his face shifted, not quite softening, but opening, like a window that has been stuck and is finally letting air through. "I told him I thought that was a romantic idea and not a practical one. We argued. He left. He called me on Sundays to tell me he was safe and not much else." He turned back to Adaeze. "Tell me," he said, "was he any good?" Adaeze took a breath. "He was slow at the beginning," she said. "He made mistakes. A mixed order on day 11. A tripped breaker on day 17. She paused. "He learned from both, without being told twice. He is careful with things that matter. He is honest in a room where honesty is inconvenient. And yesterday, when the pipe burst, he found the valve before I did." Dr. Osei listened to all of this without interrupting. When she finished, he was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I built my first business in a room smaller than this one. I did not come from money. I came from a family that knew how to work, and I built from there." He folded his hands. "I worried that my son had never known what it was to depend on the work of his own hands. I told him he needed to learn. He told me he agreed. I thought he meant he would shadow someone at the company." He looked at Emeka. "I did not know he would take it quite so literally," Emeka said quietly. "I needed it to be real, Dad, not supervised." The old man considered this for a long moment. Then he nodded, a small nod, almost to himself. He reached into the inside pocket of his jacket and produced an envelope. He set it on the counter. "This is not charity," he said to Adaeze. "I want to be clear about that. My company has 14 offices in Canada. We have uniforms, linens, and staff garments that require professional care under contract. We have been using a national chain. The contract comes up for renewal in 60 days. He tapped the envelope once. "That is a proposal. You are not obligated. Read it, think about it, have a lawyer look at it if you want, but I believe in doing business with people who do good work." He stood. He looked at her. "My son wrote about you in his Sunday calls," he said. "He said you treated him like everyone else. He said that was exactly what he needed." He paused. "Not every person in your position would have done that." Adaeze thought about the water bill in the drawer. She thought about the paper with 2 columns. She thought about 11 years of doing things the right way when no one was watching. She picked up the envelope. "I'll read it," she said. Dr. Osei nodded. He turned to his son. They looked at each other across the small room, across 30 days and a long argument and a distance that was not really about Toronto. "Come home when you're ready," the old man said. "I will," Emeka said. Dr. Osei walked to the door. His driver held it. He paused with one hand on the frame and looked back at the shop one more time. The steam machine, the rack of hanging orders, the small radio with its gospel station. Adaeze standing behind the counter, where she had stood for 11 years. He nodded once, to himself or to her, she wasn't sure, and then he was gone. The black car pulled away from the curb without hurry. The shop was quiet. Adaeze set the envelope under the register. She would open it tonight, at the kitchen table, with a cup of tea and the piece of paper she usually used for columns. She would read every line, but right now she looked at the young man still standing near the pressing station, his hands in the pockets of the gray hoodie he had worn on the very first day. Emeka, she said. It was the first time she had used his real name. It felt different in her mouth than Marcus had, more honest somehow. He looked up. You have 1 more hour on your shift, she said. The Tuesday rack isn't finished. He looked at her. Something moved across his face. Relief, maybe. Or recognition. The understanding that some people will simply let you keep standing when they could have made you fall. Yes, ma'am, he said. And he went back to work. If you've ever treated someone with dignity without knowing who they were, a stranger, a coworker, someone who couldn't pay you back, I want you to think about that for a moment. Adaeze didn't know. She just did what was right, and sometimes that is the whole story. Before you go, I want to ask you something honest. If you were in Emeka's place and the person you'd been working beside for 30 days found out the truth, would you want them to be angry? Or would you hope they understood why you needed it to be real? Drop an A or a B in the comments. A, I'd understand. Sometimes you need to learn without a safety net watching you. B, 30 days is 30 days. The truth matters more than the lesson. Tell me why. I read everyone, and if this story stayed with you, subscribe to Fresh African Folktales. There's always another story worth telling.